Court apartment building sketch plan and JMZO.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Michael Markton. I'm the president of BT Investments. And I want to apologize. I was here in August and I got a call from my daughter and Poppy ran out the street and got killed by a car. So I had to phone home. It was traumatic and it was a bad night. But I meant to be here, so I apologize for not being here that evening. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you. So I kind of read the notes in detail and talked to everyone. And what we wanted to do was generally address, some of the comments that were made at the last meeting, and kind of go over some of the some slides that address those issues. So obviously, just to start out, I'm the president of BT Investments. My partner is Bruce Toll, who's one of the two Toll brothers. The property is the corners of Newtown Place. So we initially had bought Newtown Place, which is the apartment complex, which is 150 apartments behind it. And then we bought the shopping center, which is known as Newtown Place.
So you didn't develop the apartments behind it?
No, it was Streeter Car. So Streeter Car actually built the shopping center and the apartments behind it.
Okay, so, and you've since purchased all of that?
We since purchased all of it probably 8-10 years ago. Yeah.
And this particular parcel, you just...
This one we purchased probably about 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yes. So the one thing at the last meeting, which I don't think was addressed necessarily properly, the shopping center we purchased from them actually consists of these 3 parcels here. The top left is the current kind of shopping center parcel.
Where the Citizens Bank?
Where the Citizens Bank is, and then the diner, and
So you go all the way down to where the Hoagie Place is?
Yeah, and that's what we purchased as a whole, and it's under one ownership right now, and it'll continue to be under one ownership. So all that acreage is actually included in our property. Under separate ownership is Newtown Place Apartments, a separate partnership, but one partnership owns all these 3 parcels.
So I'm sorry, can I interrupt you while you're going through?
Sure.
So each of those 3 parcels have a separate owner?
No, same owner.
Same owner, so if I went to the Bucks County Recorder of Deeds, it would show the same owner?
Same date of purchase, same
Thank
owner.
Same deed.
And the same deed?
Yeah, all
Yeah,
the same.
it's all the
I think
same.
there's a couple different parcel numbers, but it's all same application.
Yeah, and we bought that all together, as one property.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Now, I'm looking at, I only see 2 parcels there.
It's 2.
It's 2 parcels, but
I just want to make sure I'm not.
2 tax parcels.
2 tax parcels,
Yeah.
So to just go into the next, the acreage was kind of misrepresented because we didn't include the other parcel. So the density we would be looking for here, and let me kind of go back for a minute. We've been talking to commissioners about this for probably 5 or 6 years. And we initially came in with a 4-story building. And the feedback we got was, we'd be interested in, the supervisor, sorry, we'd be interested in moving forward, but we want a 3-story building. So we initially had 160 units.
So what, Newtown supervisors?
Yes, yes.
How long ago was that, recently?
The last meeting was probably, so we had a bunch of the Zoom meetings when COVID hit.
So we're talking 3 years ago?
3 years ago, yeah. And so the feedback we got was, we don't want 4 stories, we want 3 stories. So we took it from 160 units to 120 units at that point. And that was kind of the concession we made. And then we've been, attempting to get in front of you, and finally we were put on the August meeting for the sketch plan. So the density would actually be 20 units to the acre. And this just showing, the parcel that was inadvertently left out and was purchased the same, has the same ownership, is the shaded parcel here.
Which is currently has the,
Stores.
party kids and,
No,
that was
no,
inadvertently left out?
It was left out in the last one, I don't know why, but it was, yes,
Oh.
yes. Should have been here.
Yeah, it should have.
Yeah. So what you had directed us to was to kind of look at this architecture and kind of reform our architecture, saying we were looking to be much more like this.
I want to comment on that first. At the last meeting, we did not say we wanted the architecture to look like the promenade. We said that the developer worked with the planning commission,
Okay.
the supervisors.
Okay.
We didn't say we wanted it to look
All right, I
like
wasn't
the
here.
promenade.
Yeah. Well, let me, we made some changes, which we thought kind of addressed some of the comments that were made. And Jamie Martin is here from Bernardin, and she was involved in kind of putting together the architecture. So if you wanna kinda start talking.
Sure. Do you wanna bring up the elevations, or do you just want?
Yeah,
me to-
we can do that.
Hello. So originally,
Tell us who you are.
I'm sorry, Jamie Martin from Bernardin.
They're an architectural.
Originally, the architecture was a bit more modern than where we are today. We were trying to use what we would consider Bucks County materials, wood and stone, but it still has modern, massing. So that's the image on the top here in your packet. In August, we had some direction to maybe go a little bit more, less contemporary, less modern, a little bit more traditional, and that would be our middle image there. But we still went pretty monochromatic, which kept it a little bit on the modern edge. Where we are today, which is the version 2, we think is somewhere in the middle, where we're bringing back those more Bucks County materials.
Or the bottom one you talked
The
about?
bottom one, yes, sorry, version 2 is on the bottom, yeah. Bringing back those, similar materials, the wood look, the stone, but with the more traditional massing, with the pitched roofs and the 3-story, the lower, elevation.
And so I guess what we wanted to do is kind of put this in front of you and maybe get comments as to, I mean, we're open to kind of work with everyone on the architecture. You know, what you like, what you don't like, which one you prefer. So, and that's why we brought our architect with us, so if any changes would need to be made, you know, we're happy to kind of look at it.
I mean, this is a historic district.
Well, we're keeping the historic house that's there and incorporating it into the plan.
And I think it was a comment at the last meeting, and we just haven't gotten that far, was to also work with the historic commission and some comments as well. I think we're certainly happy to do that. We haven't gotten past working with you guys yet.
So what's coming down to buildings?
It's a number of one-story kind of office/retail properties. The house that's there, which is an older house, is being incorporated into the project.
Now, the property next to the house that has the hairdresser and the karate store, the building, you have the house where the side of it is facing Sycamore Street, and then the building next to that, which is right on Cambridge Lane there. That's staying too?
So yeah, this house is staying. The other one-story buildings that were built by Trooper Cars Group would be coming down. So this house is being incorporated into the plan.
But the building behind the house, part of that at one time was part of that farmhouse. It was a storage bin, and they did add on to that over the years.
If there's a portion of it, you know, that is historic, we will leave it there. I think that was mentioned last time, we can't figure that out. I didn't get out there and you can show me.
I spoke to someone who was on a hardwood years ago, and apparently that farmhouse, at the time, when you look behind you, you see the stones, the same as the house. It was, they called it a corn crib, I believe, something like that, where they stored their, whatever they were growing there, they stored it. And I don't know exactly when how much of that is original and what was added on. But
Yeah.
part of that building cannot, that has to stay.
Yeah, if it's historically
Yeah, we're
preserved,
not gonna take it out.
then I think we're obligated to.
Yeah.
I don't know that we can do anything with it. And if that's the case, then we have to honor that preservation.
So it's the both existing buildings that are there.
We haven't done research into what the historical designation is yet. But if it's part of that designation, that second structure, if it is, then I'll take your representation. We have to honor that then.
It's not apparent when you go in there and look for it, it doesn't stand out as being,
But when you walk back there,
I walk around that.
Yeah, and I had to, and I tried to figure it out after I read the notes, and I'm happy to meet you out there, maybe we'll look at it with the historic people and kind of figure it out. This is historic, we're not gonna take it down. I just can't figure it out either. I looked and I was trying to figure out, you know, what was historic other than this house. But if there is something, we'll honor that, absolutely.
Unless there's one little piece of wall that's incorporated into the existing, the new commercial, that would be all that's there, there's no separate structure outside the house.
right behind us now.
It's not.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Attached to the house, there's no separate structure that's in that area that's not part of it.
But, Harriet said part of that second structure, part of it.
Do you have Harriet's number, because I'd love to meet her out there.
I can get in touch with her.
Yeah, I'd love to meet her out there and understand it better. there's any opinions or comments on, you know, what's attractive, what's not attractive, what you like, what you don't like.
So is your plan to demolish the Citizens Bank complex also?
No, Citizens Bank would stay that through the single one-story strip center, and then this would all be on the piece next to it.
So you're trying to reuse that property twice for density purposes?
No, it's mixed use, so it'd be basically kind of it's all one property.
But it's already developed.
We'd have some retail and some residential.
Right, but I said that property's already developed, the other part is demolishing stuff, I get that.
Right.
That piece, so I don't understand.
Yeah,
how
but
you get-
from an ordinance perspective, it's more about the allocation and the consolidation of your density. So otherwise, we would be able to, you know, you could do an assemblage of other parcels with that property and develop it separately as multifamily under the ordinance. The way we've now restricted it is, and I think we added language to say that there's gonna have to be some declaration of restrictions or covenants that says, hey, the density that's allocated, that would be allocated to this parcel can be used because it's under similar ownership, and it's gonna be restricted in a fashion so that nobody can then reuse it.
Michelle, can you use two parcels that are not connected for density calculations?
Yeah, or are you just talking about architecture right now?
Well, I think there's a density
Or
question.
everything,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, so this is just for density, we're saying, since we have common ownership, I think the parcels essentially merged into one single parcel that we're able to use the entire acreage. And we propose language that says, just to make sure nobody else comes in and double counts on that parcel again, we'll restrict it, whether by its plan comment or a separate deed restriction that says this.
Just
can't be
because
used.
it's the same owner, though, it's still two separate parcels.
Of course.
It is, and so that was a question that I first had, because the lot definition does say it's a parcel of land with single and separate ownership, described by meets and bounds, blah, blah, blah. But you told me it is single and separate, but it is on the same deed,
Same
which I
deed.
think is important.
Yeah.
However, if you put that aside, I think you have other questions that you're gonna have to answer in
Sure.
regard to density.
Sure, and that's, you know, part of the comment we had gotten from the commission last time was that the density was too high, and.
Not even the amount of
Yeah.
density, let's go with the calculation, and you might have to bring your engineer into this too.
Sure.
In order to, calculate density, you have to get to Bayside area, and the Bayside area, you take out the right of ways, you take out, any easement areas, things of that nature. You also take out land that is, land without development opportunities due to restrictions, such as restrictive covenants and conservation easements. I doubt that the one parcel, I'm gonna call it 242 now, has any conservation easement on it, but when that was developed, was there a declaration of covenants and restrictions with it that only allows that development? And if so, you have to take it out of the area for your Bayside area calculation.
Right, so, I mean, we'll have to obviously further research that, but my initial, off the top of my head comment is, we would have the right, if we wanted to, demolish those structures and redevelop it in accordance with the ordinance. I don't.
If you wanted to demolish them, then we could have another
Sure,
conversation.
sure.
But as it stands now, you have a shopping center, as you stated earlier, with buildings on
Sure.
it, and you have to abide by, the development approval on how that was approved back in the
And
day.
certainly, I mean, obviously, this new development would have to go through land development, obviously, but it may be that an ancillary part of that is there's an amendment to the original land development plan that's got to now reflect the use of the density or the allocation of the density for the already developed parcel.
Right, so that's a big ask, I think, for the town.
Well, I guess we're kind of getting into semantics. I mean, as far as density, you know, we were proposing 160. You know, the supervisors said that they wanted it to be 3 stories, to be smaller. It's down to 120. I mean, it's basically, you know, what makes sense. A number's a number, but, you know, what works on the property. And, you know, we feel, and I guess, you know, that the property has, you know, the size to be able to support this without it looking overburdened at 3 stories. Right now, it's got a lot of single-story buildings that are spread out. If you look at them, they're kind of antiquated. Kind of get the
go to that again, you know, these blue buildings.
They've
that,
been there
you know,
forever, and they've been empty for a long time.
They have, and they're very hard to lease because they're kind of retail, kind of office.
Well, they're all beat up, that's
Yeah.
why they're hard to lease.
Well, I mean, they're hard to lease because they're not the kind of property that people want to rent today. And we've tried to rent them, and they're just not, they're not the kind of property that people want to rent. They're one-story, kind of slanted roof buildings. They were state-of-the-art in like maybe 1978 or 1980 when they were built. They're kind of antiquated. So what we're trying to do is improve the property and bring a new type of apartment to this area where there are none, which will allow young professionals to move in and people coming out of houses that don't want some maintenance obligations anymore, and to have a pool and to have common areas and just create a property type that currently doesn't exist. And the beauty of this property is it's very walkable. You can walk to shops, you can walk to the shops we have, you can walk to restaurants, you kind of have a park area nearby, and you can walk to the borough, go shopping in the borough. So we just thought it was a nice match for kind of the area. And really, we don't have there's no houses right next to it. There's a church property. The church across the street, they own the property next to it. So we just felt it was.
And there are homes right on Sycamore Street there, whose front doors are right at the.
That are in the borough across the street, and this will be much more attractive than that.
There are houses right on Sycamore Street,
Right, that, and they're part of the borough across.
No, they're not, they're part of the township, they're not the borough.
I thought you were talking about the ones across.
No, right on Sycamore. You got the Enterprise, and maybe there's one, two, three private homes right there.
I mean-
That's the township.
Right, so there's also some in the borough, so I was just confused, but, so it's 3
What do you mean
stories.
there's also some?
It's not much bigger than, you know, a 2-story house, it's 1-story.
There's a couple of big homes there.
And it's, but and it's broken up, so it doesn't have, you know, a lot of density, it doesn't look dense because of the architecture, and that's what we're kind of showing you. We can go back to it. Broken up, so it looks like a series of houses, the way you're proposing it.
Can you remind me where the parking will be?
It's in a garage in the middle, so you'll never see it. So.
Okay, I
Could I?
Yeah, sure,
Sorry,
Michelle.
Terry, I just wanna stay on density one more time, so I wanna finish my thought. Besides, and I'm just pointing out things that you might need a variance for, you might have to investigate further. You also need to investigate section 1000A, which is, in the general regulations section, which talks about lot area and yard required. And in that section, one can interpret that if you have a lot, you cannot, the lot and yard regulations for any new buildings shall not use any part of the lot that is required by a prior development. So that might be interpreted to say again, that 242 lot, you can't use its area for anything for your 243 lot.
And obviously, since we're proposing a text amendment, it's gonna have to be adopted by the board of supervisors of Newtown and the other townships. So our intent, our hope would be to work with staff and everybody to make sure we're cleaning up any zoning related items. We provided, I think, a catch-all provision in there about conflicts and inconsistencies.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, that's a kind of a catch-all. But we could, I mean, we're happy to continue to refine that language, if the intent is to work with us to come up with something. I think there's gonna be a couple of items like that, where this is not anywhere near final product that staff's gonna have to comment on. The other townships, the Joint Zoning Council will to get to a final product.
Okay, if you revise your ordinance, then something should be worked out in that regard too.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep, that's understood.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm concerned about this on several levels. I understand that the Delaware Valley Planning Commission sets a standard of 1.5 parking spots per, but that is not my experience in this township. I think the Delaware Valley calculation includes places like Camden and Philadelphia where there are a lot less cars. My experience is there should be 2. The other thing that's concerning to me is the absence of any kind of traffic impact study. I mean, that's a pretty narrow little place, and I didn't see any traffic impact study in here.
We had submitted it last time where actually there's 124 less trips than could be generated if the current property were full. So it's actually less traffic than what the current property would generate, and that was submitted originally with the package. So, and as far as the 2 spaces, so we built Dublin Terrace over in Upper Dublin, and that has 2 spaces, and it's a sea of parking and it's empty. We have 4,000 apartments. All our new buildings, the 1.5 has been adequate. It has not been a problem. It's actually a little high, and we have empty spaces. So we have experience with this, and we wouldn't have less spaces than we need, because then we couldn't rent our apartments, and people would not renew if they didn't have a place to park. So.
I'm glad you brought that up. And your place in Upper Dublin, though, is surrounded by shopping.
No, this is not. This is called Dublin Terrace. It's a
Okay,
different
it's not the,
property.
it's not the
No,
promenade.
not the common.
No.
Okay, that's, okay,
It's called
thank
Dublin
you.
Terrace, and it has 2 spaces per unit. And
Okay,
it's similar population, and honestly, it's a sea of parking and it's empty. So we have 1.5 in the majority of ours, and it's more than adequate, and if people within that parking, they wouldn't renew their leases, they wouldn't stay.
is Dublin Terrace age restricted?
It's age restricted, but 20% is under 55.
Okay, so that has something to do with the parking too.
Right, but we had Promenade at Granite Run, which has a garage for parking. We had
Is that the one media?
West End Flats is a media, and that has 1.4 spaces.
And you have a lot of parking underneath?
No, 1.4 spaces. That's
Yeah.
what we have. There's no parking, there's no real parking around it, and that's adequate. So, we have properties, and if people would rent it, it's really our problem if we can't do it, but people do continue to rent because we have enough spaces.
It is a problem, and it would be a problem for the township, because everybody who can't get parking in your parking facility will then look to park on the streets within the township and possibly within the
Well,
borough.
if they're, I mean, if you look at, Newtown Place apartments, if they do, well, I mean, you don't have to believe me, but we own 4,000 apartments, and we
Mhm.
study each and every one of them,
Mhm.
and we don't have a problem with parking with the 1.5. And
Are
that's
any of
what-
them in a historic district?
What's that?
Are any of them in a historic district?
So, I don't know, I have to check, I don't know. But we have a lot of apartments that we never have a problem with 1.5. It's really 1 per bedroom is what we're trying to look at, and it tends, it's always adequate. And if someone's gonna open a park here, it's gonna be on one of our other properties, but, I understand, the concern, but, it hasn't been a problem.
Well, it's a lot of concern, because one of the concerns I think the township really has to look at is what is going on in the borough, right across the street, and it's already approved, it's gonna happen. They've already approved 88
Oh, no, I know
apartments.
the project, but it's across the creek, and it's, there's no, I mean, you take it.
The apartments are gonna be right behind the Starbucks,
I know.
and where the old, wine and spirits was right there.
Right.
Using the existing openings, to Center Avenue to the bridge. That's gonna be the access in and out there. And the
Yeah.
bridge is, they've been doing work on the walkway, but that bridge, yeah.
So you people are gonna go park in the borough and then walk over to our property? I mean, we have, I can tell you, we have apartments, I'd love to take you to my other
There's
properties.
going to be no parking. They're not providing a parking garage, which was in the original plan for the borough. And I know it's completely separate, it's the borough, but it is right there, and it's gonna have a huge effect on the township and the borough.
Yeah, I'm not the developer there, I know the project, and I know it's been controversial, but we build these all the time. I'd love to take you to my other properties, I'll drive you around and show you, at 1.5, how it works in every one of our properties.
And our engineers pointed out to us, because when we reduced from 160 to 120, we kept the same number of parking spaces. We're almost actually closer to 2.
Oh, we are?
Yeah, we're at 236 spaces for 120 apartments. We're at like 1.96.
And is that in the garage only, or is that?
It's in the garage.
In the garage.
Just the
I
garage?
think there's a couple of, I think there might be like 5 spaces on the,
There's 6 outside.
on the
So we're
roundabout.
close to 2.
All right, so you're not using the other parcel to calculate the parking?
No, it's in the garage.
No, that's not, the other parcel's not utilized for
No,
parking.
the other parcel's parked by itself.
So I want to get back to traffic if I may. This would have been a lot more helpful if you'd included the study. August was a long time ago, but my recollection is the study you presented in August did not take into account that steeple view was going into place.
So what we did in August was a trip generation analysis.
Yeah.
As we progress in the process, we'll have to do a full TIA or TIS, which will take traffic counts into account, and we'll look at the surrounding area. For initial concept plan presentation, we did the trip generation, which looks at kind of standardized data and anticipates it going forward. As part of land development, as part of this process, we will have to go and undertake a full traffic study.
Yeah, I think before I can approve any aesthetics of a plan, I'd like to see a traffic study that includes what's gonna be happening in Steeple View.
Understood, and I think what we're asking for tonight.
Because this is, I mean, you can't expand the Center Street Bridge, right? You can't expand that, as I understand it.
No.
So,
Yeah.
if I can just, let me,
You know, right at the corner there of, Center and Sycamore, what is there now stays there, there's no room for any kind of traffic improvements, any road widening, what's there, it is what it is, what's there now.
Sure, and that's an obligation though that we have when we provide development. We're gonna have to study the area and be able to, not overburden the roadways. So, I mean.
120 apartments will overburden the road.
That's certainly a discussion point, but I think the feedback we're looking for tonight is, assuming we're gonna do this, and we're gonna take those extra steps to do a traffic study and prove that to you, I think we're looking for some feedback on the look and what types of, and how you would like to see the development, proposed.
Well, I'll start off, first of all, for the look, I think the density, I think 120 apartments, I think 60 is more comfortable for that area. And you are aware that your, ordinance that you're proposing has to be approved by 3 townships.
yeah,
Fully aware of that,
Okay.
yeah.
Have you gotten a copy of the letter from Wrightstown Township?
No,
We have a letter from Clemens and Rice, the Wrightstown Township Board of Supervisors, reviewed the proposed zoning ordinance to provide for 4 parking apartments. The board is not in favor of this proposed amendment. They concur with the review of the Bucks County Planning Commission. Yeah, and I attended jointure meetings with the other supervisors, and, Wrightstown is not in favor of this, proposed ordinance, and I don't have anything in writing about Greenfield, and I know they are also not in favor of it. So that's your first hurdle.
well, and what I would say to that is, the way that it's the way that the ordinance is intentionally crafted, it only applies to the TC zoning district, which we know is only in Newtown Township. So while we would welcome the opportunity to discuss at a jointure meeting with those townships, it is narrowly tailored so that it would have an impact only in the Newtown Township.
Well, I think that Wrightstown and Greenfield are having, they have a little foresight, and once this proposed ordinance would be in there, developers could come in and say, well, you don't have a TC district, but you have other districts that we can build there, and, they're foreseeing that down the road.
We understand that they have to adopt the ordinance, and I think our first stop is here though, because if Newtown Township doesn't support it, it doesn't really matter what Wrightstown or Greenfield do. If this development is occurring here, it's gonna have the most impact, for you folks. So you're the first stop, and this is the first level of.
Well, I think they're looking ahead saying, you can, a developer could come in 5 years down the road and say you're being exclusionary. You don't have a TC district, but you have to allow this ordinance somewhere. Well, we don't know where that would go.
Well, we certainly don't want that to happen. We try to craft the ordinance in a fashion that would, and I think that's the intent of any ordinance, is to not allow for those types of challenges, so.
So, moving on from here, I think you have to amend this ordinance. It has to go back to the Bucks County Planning Commission, and it has to go to the other joint partners.
There's no doubt, I don't think we're sitting here expecting you to say, recommend adoption of this ordinance as drafted. We're really here to get feedback on what the development might look like that you would support. And then the next step beyond that is to continue to work through the ordinance, because it hasn't been fully reviewed by staff either. They're gonna have some additional comments. It's a working, living, breathing document that is gonna see multiple revisions before it's
I
ultimately
understand that,
adopted.
but I don't feel like you're putting part of the course of this.
well, we have to start somewhere, so we're starting, and this is a sketch plan, we're not adopting ordinances. And if you have comments, and if the board feels you only want 60 units, make that recommendation to the supervisors, and then we'll go in front of them, and they can adopt your recommendation. We're just trying to build something nice here. I'm really sorry. feel that way, but we've had multiple meetings with supervisors. The ones we talked to seem to think that 120 units is okay. If they don't, if that's your recommendation, then they don't, we will respect that.
Well, you are permitted to build your garden apartments are permitted here. Why can't you build within what our zoning permits?
So garden apartments require first floor retail, which, I mean, it's just, the market is not.
And there's too much retail here already. I mean, the shopping centers that are all together.
Well, that's something
massive
the
amounts
township
of-
could look at.
Yeah, there's just massive amounts of retail over there, and it's just too much. I mean, the retail we have, and we try to lease these buildings, and we can't. I mean, there's just not a lot of users who wanna lease these buildings. So, we're trying to do something we think is nice. I understand, but we have to start somewhere, and if that's your recommendation, if you wanna make that recommendation to the board of supervisors, then you're got to do that. I mean, but you have to start, it's not, no one's adopting anything, it's sketch plan.
I understand that, I understand. I wanna give the other members chances to chime in on this. So,
I share your concern about the parking and everything. And we've talked about this numerous times as to not just this development, but that whole Sycamore Street corridor and the intersecting roads and how that is going to be impacted by these people view and after they put up the turn lane at the one intersection, it's a nightmare. That whole area, not the problem, it's the existing problem, and my concern would be how that worsens over time. To go back to the question that you originally asked about the architecture, I would feel more comfortable if somebody from Par looked at it. I mean, looking at the picture, it's lovely, but I would rather have somebody that has a lot more expertise in that area take a look at these and offer comment to you and help you develop that, because ultimately, that's where I would give their lead. But traffic and parking, to me, is the number one concern, and especially in that area. I feel for you about the retail and that land city not generating any revenue. I think that's a real concern for you.
I mean, so if I can address two things, the one is, I didn't realize it, but I guess we still have, almost 2 spaces per unit in the garage. I think it's too many, and I think it's a waste, but we will honor that, number one. And number two, the trip generation, if we were able to fill what's on there, it would be 124 more trips per day than if we built this. So this is actually a reduction of traffic from what it could be if this was all filled up.
But
So-
it's not awful.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, under
You're
current
comparing something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, but the way the traffic studies work, and any development, they have to assume that at some point this is going to be at max capacity. That the developer is not gonna sit there and let it just not have any revenue generated. They're eventually somehow, in some way, get to max capacity.
If you fill this up, there will be more traffic than there is now because the place isn't full.
And I think the point Michael's making is that the retail at max capacity is gonna have a greater traffic impact than the apartments at max capacity.
can I just ask Michelle, we don't have retail at Cambridge Place, correct? There's no retail there?
What do you mean?
And the apartments behind?
we own that, no, there's no retail, that's flat.
So if this were to be developed as garden apartments, could the retail be removed?
No, I don't really heard of it.
I don't know what you mean.
Like he's saying, under the current ordinance, garden apartments require retail.
Require mixed use.
Mixed use.
Right.
I think specifically first floor retail or commercial.
I think it just says,
The 20%, I think the 20% mixed use maybe.
garden apartment use B10 when part of a mixed use building only. Is that what you wanted to ask?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to be clear, I'm not philosophically opposed to this, but I want to see some hard numbers about traffic. And in hard numbers about traffic that include Steeple View. Because in my recollection from what I saw in August was that was not there. And I'd like to be able to do some calculations myself. So, And I feel like making a judgment about the aesthetics of the architecture without knowing that the infrastructure is set up and can accommodate this, is kind of like doing financial planning based on winning the lottery. No, we're getting it wrong here. So I want to see some hard data about this. As I said, that includes the developments that are going on. Until we see that, it seems to me that we're doing this backwards.
I guess if I could set the stage a little more then, we came back before you in August, and our hope was to go forward and meet with the supervisors, get everybody's collective feedback, even maybe some of the other Joint Townships, make some revisions and come back to everybody. And the recommendation or path that was set forward from staff was, well, you haven't gotten a recommendation from the Planning Commission, so we're not letting you go to the next level. So what we're asking from you tonight, I think, is not a recommendation of approval, a recommendation of do X, Y, and Z things. One could be conduct a traffic study, so that we can then take those comments, put them in our notebook, go to the next couple of other meetings, and then have kind of a full picture of all the comments so that we can go back to the drawing board and say, we need to get this data, we need to do this, we need to make these changes, so that we can then come back before you with some of those. Unfortunately, maybe the wires were crossed in August and we didn't get that recommendation, so to speak, from the Planning Commission. So from a procedural standpoint, we're still with you guys, and we're looking to get some of that feedback that we can then move forward with.
I seem to recall somebody in August saying to us, now is not the time to talk about traffic. And I objected to that then, and I want to see some hard numbers. I'm not philosophically opposed if you can come in close to the density, and if you can prove that the infrastructure is there to absorb this, then fine, but I'm not seeing that yet. So that's where I am.
I think as I said before, I think it's a good location for apartments. I mean, that's the place I think your town should look at besides the business commons. It's a reasonable place. I like to drop the density. Just to wrap my head around taking existing developed property, include that, because I'm not sure what those implications might be for other parcels along Sycamore Street. You know, it's that potentially could lead to overdevelopment, maybe not. Like I said, that one I just don't fully understand. Parking, I'm fine with. You might have, I think there's a lot more single people buying 1 or 2 bedroom places, so I'm not overly concerned about parking. The renderings doesn't really matter a lot to me. I'm hoping a lot of things like the original one, version 2, person are mine, but that's, I think, when anybody else would want to kind of jump in, they have a great preference one way or the other. And traffic, I said, I think at the end of the day, you're going to provide less traffic than what you're allowed, so that part's good. It's unfortunate what Newtown Borough is doing, but you know, there's a lot of through traffic on Sycamore Street that's coming from outside that local area. It's a through street to go a lot of places. We have no control of that. But right now, the traffic on Sycamore Street is almost never backed up, so I don't see that being a significant impact, as I don't think 88 units in a row will probably be that big a deal, other than getting out of the borough.
Bill?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the parking. I think 2 spaces per unit is fine. Architecturally, I'm not an architect, but these all look fine. I probably like the 3rd version the best. And in terms of density, I guess that's the question for people like Michelle to parcel out as to whether that area of land can support this many apartments. It does seem very large for that area. I mean, it looks huge.
So we did a study, just find one of the questions that came out last time is, you know, we have a minimum lot size for these use of 3 acres.
Okay.
How many other parcels in the TC district? There's only a handful. And one of them is the church's property adjacent to us. There's only a handful of other 2.5 acre parcels that maybe you could do an assemblage of to get above the 3 acres. So really, if you're in favor of the concept of apartments along this corridor, you're really concentrating the density to this location. think that's sort of the planning purpose and tool here.
And then just, I would agree with Terry, as, you know, as long as the parking, the independent parking study says it's okay, then that part of it is fine. And I'm not opposed, you know, I'm not principally opposed to that.
John?
I agree with, most of the board here. I think the density is too high for that small area. I mean, I like eating breakfast at Jake's, and sometimes you can't even get out of the parking lot because of the traffic, and that's late morning. And rush hour and many other times during the day, you can't back up. It's Sycamore. It's so tremendous. You know, people would want to stay away from that area. Also, you said that you'd like to see these apartments go to young professionals. In August, I was under the impression that it was mostly older people.
No, it's so, I don't know what they said, but it's usually a combination of seniors and young professionals. So you get the people moving into the township that want to live out here and decide where they want to move. And then you have, you know, older people who are getting out of their house, and I did say that before. They're leaving their houses, they don't want to have any maintenance obligations, and we take care of everything. We've changed all the rules.
The fact that the young professionals is going to generate more trips, more traffic, and so the older people, like myself, I mean, I'm in the doctors at least once a week, so they're going to be
Well, I can
traffic
tell you,
on the street.
my daughter and her live-in boyfriend both work from home now. There's just a lot of working from home going on, and they closed all their offices.
How many people is that though? Most of the people still go to a place of employment. They don't work from home.
It's a lot less than it was, I can tell you.
Not less than what, sure, but you know, which if you read which they told me in August, read this and read that about parking, and that's subjective. You know, a lot of the places are bringing their employees back, not letting them work from home anymore. So, I mean, traffic is the main problem with that 120 apartments. Okay. And that area. I mean, I like that, you know, the old blue buildings, yeah, they never were full, and all the 28 years I've been in Newtown. And the problem is building, you know, this density stuff. You know, I grew up in Philadelphia, and Newtown is slowly becoming Philadelphia. A lot of people say that.
Is there, so explain that, is there a lot of building going on here that's making it much more dense?
The shopping center,
that shopping center, I don't know how anyone approved that. I'm a shopping center guy. I won't go there
but
because there's so much.
It's great. It's great to have those things here, but you know, traffic. That's what I'm mainly talking about. Generating.
Okay. Well, so I understand. We have to address that and make sure it's covered. I agree.
As far as what it looks like, hey, that'd be great to have that.
Okay.
Just too much. Just too much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah? Okay.
I have a very different concept of nightmare in traffic than the rest of the night. I laugh at this traffic. I sail right through.
Thank you.
Could I bring up two
Sure,
things?
yeah.
All right, besides the, parking and the density, which we already talked about, massiveness, I think, was brought up, and just to let the planning commission be aware, B10 was also brought up before. A B10 use is allowed in the TC district. It requires a maximum length of its building of 130 feet, where they are providing their text amendment to be 300 feet. So it's more than double what the ordinance says now. Not that it couldn't be changed, and that's what they're providing.
And what about the height too?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about the height.
The one comment on the length, and I think it was something we discussed last time, the length is by somewhat part of the parking core center. There's a certain level, and then how you deal with slopes, etc. That in order for us to put a parking garage central to the building, there's got to be a certain amount of length there in order to accommodate. So the concept kind of dictates that length.
And the other thing we tried to do, if you look at it, it's broken up, so it doesn't, it's not one monotonous building. It
Yeah,
almost
you
looks like-
have done a lot of that.
It
yeah.
looks like a series of buildings, so it doesn't actually, so, and we do this a lot of places, and you have the ins and outs, and you have the different architecture, like the bottom one, which makes it seem a lot more broken up. And I understand because you don't want something to seem like one long structure, but that doesn't feel like it just because it's been broken out.
Have you done, geotechnical analysis of the area for a parking garage? Have you done any of that below ground? That might be where you wanna spend your next bit of money, to see the amount of rock that is there or not there. And if you're lucky, if we could talk about building height next, specifically for the planning commission. The, west side of Sycamore Street, currently in the TC district, allows 3 stories or 40 feet of building height. They wanna go to 45 feet, excuse me. However, I think we also have to talk about front yard setback. The current front yard setback has a maximum of 15 feet, which means that the building can be no further back from Sycamore Street than 15 feet. They wanna put it at 60 feet, I believe, 60 feet back.
60 feet from the paved carway.
Right, from the paved carway, which is what the TC district means, but that's important because this is going up on a slope. So if you're 15 feet back, which is what the current ordinance says, you're maybe 2 or 3 feet higher than the existing road. If you go back 60 feet, you're 14 maybe feet higher, and then 14 feet higher than the road, and then they want to go up 45 feet higher than that, which I think at one of the previous meetings, maybe staff level meetings, we asked if you could do an elevation from the east side of Sycamore to the west side of Sycamore. And I think if you do that, you're going to see, they're going to see how much difference.
So you
the
rather have it
elevation
closer
is.
to
Well, I think the other,
It
the other
requires it to be
discussion-
15
No, I know,
feet
but
back.
yeah.
in the discussion, there's a lot of, street tree landscaping, especially I think
Sure.
along Sycamore.
Yeah.
Where, and this is obviously a thing we're looking for feedback on, but I think there was at least a desire, or at least what we heard originally was to preserve that, which means pushing the building back. If,
Sure, so
So
the
it's kind of
trade-off is
pick-
remove the trees or have
or have
a
a
55 foot,
Well, I
what
guess
appears to be
most,
55 foot.
most places where we develop, rather than push it further back from the road, because from an image standpoint, you know, it seems smaller because it's further back. And if the trees are in front of it, then you're not gonna see a lot of it, because a lot of these trees are mature and are 30, 40 feet high. So a lot of it's gonna be covered up.
I think our last renderings, we had the superimpose of
We
the
do have
trees.
renderings in here that show the trees as well.
Yeah,
Very net, that's-
We took them out, but
Yeah.
the idea was that those mature trees were staying.
So they're staying, so that obscures,
Some of the view.
pushing it further back.
But they're deciduous, right?
What's that?
They're deciduous trees, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so part of it, Eric, I took those contours as 2-foot contours.
I'm pretty sure that's
So
what
if
they
they're 1
are.
foot, then it's not that.
So you would rather have it closer to the road? If we don't bring that to the road.
No, you don't, but it is the TC
I know
district,
it.
which in that district, they want the buildings closer to the road. They want it more walkable, they want it more of a town commercial feel. Which is why the promenade was built, it has the wide sidewalk, but it was built right next to the wide sidewalk to fit within that 15-foot maximum setback requirement. And it's not up to me, it's up to this group as recommending body and then the board as supervisors, of course. But I wanted them to know how much higher it's gonna be.
It would be looming from, I think if you're going down Sycamore Street, it would be huge.
I just remember back when
So
the
you rather
promenade
have
was
closer?
built, that was the biggest discussion.
I think that's
Showed
the
it in
feeling,
numbers.
so it won't seem as tall.
Well, the height.
I can tell you, the closer you bring a building to the road, the more massive it seems. I mean, this is, I.
Just the height in general, I feel wherever you put it, it's going to jump, it's just gonna loom over everything else on Sycamore.
Well, you're currently allowed 40 feet, so this would be just 5 feet more. If you wanna tell me you would only like it to be 40 feet, just tell me that, and let's make that another recommendation, and we'll look at that. But I can tell you, I do these for a living, the further back, the less massive it seems. That's just,
That's true even when it's elevated 15, 20 feet because of that.
yeah. And I don't wanna take these trees down, I mean, there's nice trees on the street.
just think that there's an offset, but if everything is flat, one other way is better. Because visually, when you're up on a hill, which would be, it's gonna be like it's 60 feet rather than 45.
You also have a variety too, you know, and most of the 45 is really to the peak roof portion. The rest, so it's not like you have a 45-foot building straight across.
We just didn't want to do a flat roof.
You know, it's not a flat roof.
Where are all of your, sorry, where are all of your, air conditioning units and all of that? Is it up on the roof? I was looking at your architect.
We have a pretty new flat roof over the garage, so
Okay.
there's nothing, the intent is they won't see anything.
We won't see any units.
So it will be up on the roof?
The condenser.
Behind,
Okay.
if you look at the
And they're
architecture
small.
here, it would be behind what you see there, it would not be on those roofs. You would not
So
see
all
it.
mechanicals will be visible.
No,
No, they're saying
no.
it won't be visible.
There's a roof of the parking garage portion that's a flat roof.
Yeah.
And they'll all be there, and they'll be obscured by the architecture.
And Michelle, to answer your question, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
To bring up was, because of the elevated height there, what about the stormwater management with the density as proposed?
Well, they'll have to work that out.
They're 1 foot contours, so it's 7
Oh,
feet.
okay, so it's
Yeah.
7 feet.
It took a while for my old eyes to
Yeah,
focus
I
in.
could see this,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's 7 feet.
So it's not 14 feet higher, it's 7 feet higher, but still it'll be over 50 feet high, 52 feet high.
And so you did read the review letter from the, Clemens and Richter from Wrightstown Township?
No,
They said
no,
they
we
didn't have
received
to
it.
pass it.
It's basically the same comments as he got from the website.
Okay, we have the planning.
Here, I got a copy here.
I got it.
Michelle.
Just to mention some of the things that they did note here, Wrightstown Township. The borough is not currently in the jointure, but we should not ignore the potential impact this would have on the borough, which already is struggling with density and stormwater. The proposed use is 8 times the density permitted in the R2 district. The proposed length of 300 feet is 2 times greater
So
than.
the
what-
R2 district, where's, are we in the R2 district?
I think they meant the TC district.
Oh, that TC.
We're not in R2.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that, for R2, I would say.
And the township has worked to develop a streetscape along Sycamore to preserve the town feel of the community. This doesn't seem to be consistent with our long-term approach to planning. The structure would be closer to Sycamore than any other structures in the district. This does not keep the character of the TC district. And it appears that you, in this proposed district, you get public places or historic preservation, but not both. Both elements are important considerations for development, which should not be compromised. I mean, I can go along with this.
So you agree with the answer?
Yeah, sure. John?
Yeah, one important thing in that Wrightstown is A4 and A5 regarding the parking garage that is surrounded by living space, which they felt was a little bit of a fire hazard, especially given the electric cars that tend to catch on fire. And I'm a little bit concerned about that as something new that I have no experience with. And I'm wondering if there's other instances like that, other types of surrounding garage.
Yeah, we have about 7 properties that have the same setup, and we haven't had any problems with it. And there's architectural codes that we have to comply with on each one, and we do have car charging stations in each of our garages.
And is adequate means for the fire department to get in there?
Absolutely, they have to be built so that you can fight a fire there, so, and they're sprinklers, they're all sprinkled.
Sprinkled.
Yeah.
I do think that was a comment in the planning commission, maybe from the Bucks County Planning Commission, maybe from this is a potential addition is performance standards for how you're gonna construct the parking garage. And obviously, everybody's reviewed the land development by the fire marshal. He's gonna have to make sure that he's comfortable with access and fire life safety measures.
Okay, great, thanks.
Ellen, you have any comments?
No, I think they're doing a good job of covering it all. Yeah, the blooming nature of the visuals in this is not appealing as far as how it would fit into our township, so I certainly would like to see it amended some more for, less density, for one. Other than that, I think you guys have asked the right questions, and thank you for coming and presenting to us again.
Dennis, you have any comments?
Density.
No, Mary did not.
No.
Well,
We don't wanna
she
let
said
Mary
she feels
lose.
differently than most people.
No,
She comes from New York, remember?
yes, I have never seen traffic in Newtown.
This is rural for there.
Right.
But, and it does seem, when we get to that far, we do have some hard people here. It does seem like you're trying to make it what we have in mind, using the Bucks County materials and the variation of the facade so that it's not one big building. I bet if it all goes through and you do come to Harbor work with us, I think it's gonna work in that regard.
Mary, myself, and Craig, who's not here tonight, we are also on the harbor board. Hate to disappoint you.
I have a couple of
Getting early feedback.
questions. First, we're gonna be having a new, electric vehicle charging station ordinances sometime in the relatively near future. Will your building provide for electric vehicle charging?
Yes. And I can tell you what we're doing now, it's really hard to ascertain how many people are gonna have electric cars. So we're actually wiring it for a lot more electric cars than are actually, so we tend to put in per unit, like one charging station for probably every 15 units, but it's wired for more, just in case that becomes something that's, and we're thinking about that all the time. I mean, honestly, we're just trying to build something nice here. I understand the concerns and we can definitely address them. We're not trying to change the way of life or anything else. We thought this would be nice, and I understand these are the comments, and, you know, we'll obviously consider all the comments that were made. So.
You know, it can be beautiful there, you can build something nice there. You know, the problem I have is that you have crafted an ordinance that needs to be approved by 3 townships, even though the other townships don't have a TC district. I think we're pretty capable of crafting our own ordinances. It's just too big, it's too much.
Well, yeah, well, we've already reduced it once, if we have to reduce it again.
You're gonna have to
definitely
reduce
consider
it again. I mean, 160 was off the rails, 120 is still too much.
And I guess, when you say too much, you just think there's too much on this particular site, is that?
I think 60 apartments would be palpable.
And when you say that,
Density.
But what would 60 look like? I don't even, you know, that's the whole thing. That would
That's your
actually,
town.
if I did 60, I can tell you right now, let's say I put that right there on, I could still, if I did 60, I could build that and just surface park behind it, that'd be 60. But that would be the same way it would look from the road. You're not seeing the wings of it, so basically, I could do that bottom picture would be approximately 60 units. I mean, you can kind of look at it, and then I would just get rid of all the other wings and you could surface park it. It would still look like that. So honestly, we understand your concerns, and I think we're gonna work to address them and see if we can do something. But we can kind of take these concerns and then go to the supervisors, hear their concerns, and then come back and go through the process again, and then we have to go to jointure, but we understand.
What if it were 2 stories instead of 3?
or 2.5?
I mean, we can look at it. I mean, I hear you, and obviously I understand your concerns.
Yeah, this is our historic district. We only have 3 blocks on Sycamore Street that are actually in historic district. I've been on
How did these,
Howard
I can tell
Mary
you,
has.
the buildings that are there now, other than the one building we just surveyed, are crappy little buildings. They're like wood. I just don't know how anyone approved that. And we did buy
They
it.
were built 150 years ago.
No, that building. We're talking about the little buildings, like the blue building.
In the back, yeah.
In the back. I mean, they're just not appealing at all.
Well, that was a little bit of the 80s, I believe.
I know.
And if you know how many people were living in Newtown at that time.
And
Nobody.
yeah,
Half of what we got now.
yeah, it was less than
You're trying to
half
find-
of the population that we have now.
But that's a good point,
Yeah.
because the other newer buildings.
Yeah, I look at that blue building there, it's just like, ooh.
That are not.
I nice to look at. I mean, 50 years ago they were, but
Wait a minute, hold it up. I think that if they were built in the early eighties, they may predate the historic district.
They were built in like 88.
It looks like a eighty.
Because we had old buildings here, but we did not become an official designated historic district till the late eighties.
Well, I can tell you, the architecture we're proposing looks a lot more like the historic district than those things. Those things are horrible. I want to tear them down. I mean, I guess I gotta figure out what you guys will accept. I gotta tear this place down because it's horrible. I'll work on something that makes.
we're okay with that. I think we're okay with that coming down. We would like to see something nice there. We really would. But it's gotta work and with what's going on, and, you know, the borough is right there. And what they're proposing, it's gonna, the impact is gonna be.
Well, I can tell you, I'm definitely, like, if there's traffic issues and I have to improve the roads, I'll improve the roads. I do that all the time. If the parking issues we can talk about, we can address that. As far as the number of units on the property, I have to look at it and figure it out, because it's kind of an
There's no
economic.
room for, road improvements there. When you look at the corners, I mean, there's just no place to go there. It is what it is there. You gotta work with that, with what exists.
Mhm. Well, that's why we said it's less strips, but, you know, that's the only thing we can kind of go by, but we'll work on it.
Can we have a resolution or something? We're talking in circles.
Right, I have a couple of questions and then,
I have one.
everybody has a question.
Well, my question is, you named many locations where your building is. So there are people that want to live here in
Lots of
small
people.
units.
Lots of people.
Okay.
And they're not that small, honestly. We are generally, we build around 1,000 square feet per unit, which is on the bigger side.
Is that for a two-bedroom?
They average 1,000, so like a 1,200 square foot two-bedroom and maybe a 900 square foot or 800. So we have more two-bedrooms here because we're trying to get. So what happens is when you have, you know, this is geared more towards older people. We'll have young professionals, but we had, you know, it's kind of 60% two bedrooms because, believe it or not, when an older couple moves in, they like to have two bedrooms because the husbands and the wives sometimes want to go in different rooms. You know, the one in the middle, so it's geared towards that. But we build on the bigger side, and I can tell you the other thing we do is we don't sell, we keep it. So we build to a higher architectural standard. We spend more money than most people because we just want to keep them forever. Because and I can tell you, we bought this location because whatever we can do there, this is a tremendous location. It's walkable to the borough. It's walkable to shopping. You have, you know, you have restaurant there. You have green space. So to have like walkability to the borough, walkability to shopping, plus green space, you can't beat the location. So we knew ultimately it would be a great location for something than these ugly blue buildings. And that's why we bought it. We didn't buy it because we like these buildings, but I understand that we have to kind of appease everybody and make everybody happy. So
I understand when you developers, you buy these parcels, it's pure responsibility for you, what you're gonna put there and what you can't put there.
Well, I mean, we've owned it for, I don't know, 8-9 years already, so we're working on it. I mean, hopefully we'll get to something where we all come to the same, and let me tell you something. I was the chair of my planning commission and I was on my planning commission for 9 years. I was a commissioner for 4 years, and I understand the concerns because I have sat in their seat for a long time, and I'm gonna do my best to address them, I guess. So
You know, I've been up here a long time,
Yeah.
17 years, and I've seen a lot of development in those years down in, you know, the center of town, in RTC district. And there are a lot of things that we look back on now, oh, we should have done this, and that was wrong, and, you know, we should have done this that way, so. I think especially being in our historic district, I'm treading very carefully here.
I understand.
Can you get rid of the 7-Eleven?
I tried to buy it, and I wanted to get, you know, honestly, it's an eyesore. I've tried to buy it and tried to do everything I can, but apparently it's a very successful 7-Eleven.
And it's in the historic district.
I know, it's
Hasn't
horrible.
changed.
Except for that was before that was more even better than 7-Eleven.
Yeah, if you could just go sweep the parking
Wasn't
lot,
the
that would be a big improvement.
Yeah, I try, in fact, every 2 years I try to buy it. It's horrible. It is. So.
I think I'm hearing it, but how would it argue to the core parking concept? It sounds like if it's got small, you might not need it, and that would, if you didn't deal with that concept, you might be able to actually separate this one large building into several smaller ones, which would be more historically accurate.
Okay. We'll look at that.
Something to think about.
Because where we're at now, you have to go back to the two townships, it has to go back to the Bucks County Planning Commission for review. And I don't think any kind of ordinance is gonna fly with the other two townships.
I don't know what ordinance, I mean, the jointure is a tough process, we understand that, so.
And we live with,
I know you do, I know you do.
Okay.
But sometimes it's good for us.
I have a question about the inner parking lot. That I just want to understand, if I were to be in one of those apartments, is my car covered in that garage? See, that's what I think.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people love. People love cover, because you know the snow, it doesn't get as hot, it doesn't get as cold, you don't have the sun beating down, you don't deal with the rain. And that's why we do that.
Cars don't get beat up.
Yeah, it does, it lasts.
You know, and another thing with the borough development, their parking garage is not happening
No, I know.
in there.
That's insane.
I mean, they're providing parking 2.5 blocks away, so you would, I guess.
I cannot believe that.
I wouldn't do that, that wouldn't be,
Well, their whole planning commission quit over that, so think about that.
and one other thing, there are some limitations on EDUs in the township right now, the borough. 120, may take you 10 years to get that many.
yeah.
But so, the smaller it is, the more likely you are to get a positive response, because I'm on the board of the Newtown Sewer Authority, and it's really problematic. We just.
I mean, that was way back when, so I'm actually, so we're the biggest developer in Upper Dublin, and our manager is Kurt Ferguson. So, when I first came in, and Kurt is a wonderful man, when we first came in, Kurt was here, so, and that's what we were told years and years ago. So
Still true.
and I sit on the municipal authority now in Upper Dublin for their office park. So I see Kurt once every 3 weeks, and he's a great guy, and that's the first thing he said to us when we came in. So, thank you.
Michelle, do you have anything else?
No.
No?
Any more public comment?
Any public comment, any questions?
So we can do this by consensus, because there's no formal matter before us, it's all sort of a discussion. So let's sort of see if we understand what the consensus of the group is. What do you wanna,
Yeah.
facts from the
What I thought we seemed to agree on is density could be reduced. We need traffic information. We're not opposed to the concept of apartments there. And I don't think anybody has come to any kind of agreement on the setbacks. From my notes, we mentioned that the setbacks of 15, should be 15 feet per hour. And.
5 feet minimum, 15 feet max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can have anything in the notes saying it must, the setback
We'll
must
just
be.
leave it as it's an open question.
Yeah.
It is a unique property with that much slope.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah,
the
it's
only
on
one
a
on
flat
six where
street.
it has that much slope. Basically is right there. I mean, the Lowndes house is up pretty high, but it's set back off the road. Maybe that's an interesting look. Do you want to bury the historic house back or have the new units be a similar distance off the road? That may be something for hard to consider.
Yeah. That's true, I didn't even think of that. In line with the old thing.
You might be able to get back that far, house is set back, but that's another consideration of
Yeah.
the logistics there.
And I will get in touch with Harriet about that second building next to the stone house.
So if.
I know there's some kind of history on it.
Yeah, let me know, I'll reach out.
At least a portion of
Yeah,
it
we'll look at it.
was storage. Dennis?
Did I hear a consensus on height?
No, I didn't, no, we just mentioned that it was.
Another open question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we're asking for 45, and
It's 5 feet higher than 40.
40 would be permitted.
How high is the problem? Did you get any?
40.
That is.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a discussion.
Okay, anything else?
well, we also wanted to take into consideration what's going on in the park. As far as that new development is going on there. And if
That sensitizes the traffic.
Correct.
Yeah, that would be traffic.
Well, yes, but also, if you take a look at what they're doing there, because they're not that far away from this, but they're doing it much smaller parcels, much smaller buildings. And that has a certain charm of its own. Of course, the borough was different than a township, but there's something to be looked at, is whether we want something smaller. Smaller would allow for fewer apartments. So that's why I also suggested breaking up this 300-foot long building into 2, 3, 4 smaller buildings. That would help with all these questions.
I think we all agree that it does need to be reduced. And then to go back, to continue with the new ordinance is going to be a process. I think you know that.
No, we fully anticipate that. There's no illusion that this version today is getting stopped. We want to be asking for this. We understand that work with everybody. Come up with a more refined draft.
Anything else that we haven't discussed?
I just want to go on record and say I am cautiously optimistic that if we can solve the infrastructure problems, we can move forward. But it's just not at all clear to me that we have a solution in sight for those.
No, I know what it is.
I take you at your word for sincerity that you want to make something nice for Newtown. I'm picking up on that.
Yeah, trying. If we get there, we get there, I know so.
I hope so too.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Mary, do you have enough information to try to put together a synopsis of this
I can do a
consensus?
synopsis.
Well,
Yeah.
the list of the consensus items, the things that are agreed upon, things that are not agreed upon, things that are open.
I don't think we have any religious opinions. I mean, I'm the only one that doesn't see the traffic problem, but I understand why nobody else wants traffic.
I think the only thing we would ask is just a consensus that you would like us to continue with
Yeah,
other
I wanna see
entities.
with some guidelines.
So that we can work with the supervisors, the joint sheriff, and then obviously we're not close to the finish line here, so we're coming back to you guys.
Yeah, and I think you don't hear from us exactly what you're gonna hear again from the supervisors, perhaps with more sort of controls on it. I think they may be more concerned about it, because this is more conceptual and more practical in many ways. So, that's it, if you think you have enough, and I'll help you with that, Mary.
Yeah.
I'd like to know too as well.
I can sit down and put numbers on 1, 2, 3. But I think that for the most part, we're in kind of agreement.
Okay.
Thank you for your
All right,
time.
thank you.
Thanks for listening to my presentation. Be sure to visit my website at www.johnmacnewtown.info. It's chock full of information about issues of importance to Newtown Township residents. You can also find important township documents, my email newsletter, my personal points of view, for example, my blog, and links to videos and audio podcasts.